Life at 55 turned out to be quite different from my expectations. I'm Diane, and I've dedicated years to shaping a serene life in a quaint coastal town. The days unfolded with a certain rhythm. Mornings spent at the quaint bookstore where I earned my keep, afternoons meandering along the shore, and evenings in solitude within my cottage, the gentle whispers of the waves coaxing me into slumber. A decade has passed since my marriage ended, and I have come to embrace the comfortable solitude that followed. At least that was my assumption. A restlessness brewed within me, an insatiable yearning for something beyond my grasp, though I struggled to articulate it. That is, until Ethan strolled into my world. On a misty Tuesday, I caught my first glimpse of him. The bookstore exuded a serene stillness, a day so tranquil that the bell above the door seldom rang. As I was restocking the shelves, he walked in with an effortless swagger and a striking presence. Ethan, at the age of 24, had tousled dark hair and eyes that appeared to pierce right through you. He had just arrived in town, residing at a nearby rental as he focused on a freelance photography project. He inquired about a book on local history, his voice fluid, accompanied by a subtle smile that sent a thrill through me. I dismissed it as trivial, merely a delightful young man engaging in casual conversation. Yet there was an essence about him that remained, akin to a melody that plays on repeat in your mind. In the weeks that followed, Ethan established himself as a familiar presence. He would stroll in, always armed with an excuse, a suggestion for a book, an inquiry about the town, and we would find ourselves engaged in conversation for hours on end. He possessed a delightful curiosity and a sharp wit, effortlessly making me feel acknowledged in a manner I hadn't experienced in years. I found myself laughing a bit too heartily at his jokes, my cheeks warming when his hand lightly grazed mine as he handed me a book. I reassured myself that it was innocent, merely a connection with someone who happened to be younger. Yet, beneath the surface, I understood it was something greater. A glimmer flickered in his eyes, an intensity in the atmosphere surrounding us that became increasingly impossible to overlook. One evening, the bookstore held a quaint poetry reading, and Ethan arrived, camera in hand, eager to capture the moments for our website. The event extended into the night, and when the final guest departed, it was merely the two of us remaining, the shop softly illuminated, the atmosphere thick with the aroma of aged books and ocean breeze. As I stacked the chairs, concentrating on the task at hand, he placed his camera down and approached me, each step purposeful and measured. "You stand out, Diane," he said, his voice soft, nearly a murmur. "You possess an undeniable spark within you. Many individuals in your age group have found their place. And what about you? You continue to blaze brightly." I stood still, my fingers clutching the back of a chair. His words crashed over me, awakening feelings I thought I had long since buried. I chuckled, attempting to divert the attention. "Oh, Ethan, I'm just a dull old woman who peddles books. There's nothing intense about me." He moved nearer, just within reach, allowing me to sense his warmth and catch the subtle hint of cedar from his cologne. "You're mistaken," he stated, his gaze fixed on me. "I perceive it. I've observed it since the very beginning." The atmosphere felt suffocating, the distance between us charged with an unsettling tension. My heart raced and my breath came in quick, shallow gasps. I ought to have taken a step back, shifted the topic, or done anything to alleviate the tension. However, I chose not to. I found myself frozen in his stare, a surge of vitality coursing through me like never before. The stillness lingered, thick with potential, and I found myself inclining toward him, pulled by an irresistible force. He extended his hand, gently tucking a loose strand of hair behind my ear. The caress was gentle, hesitant, yet it coursed through me like a sudden flame catching on parched kindling. My skin ignited where his fingers brushed, and I noticed it in his gaze as well, the same desire, the same wild craving. "Ethan," I murmured, my voice a fragile whisper, teetering between a caution and a beckoning, uncertain of its true intent. He stood his ground. Instead, he bridged the gap, his fingers gliding to the nape of my neck, drawing me softly closer to him. And then he pressed his lips against mine. Initially, it was tentative, a careful exploration, as if he were allowing me the opportunity to retreat. However, I chose not to. I returned the kiss, my hands exploring his chest, the warmth of his shirt enveloping my fingertips. The kiss intensified, filled with longing and desire, and for an instant, everything else vanished. No age, no boundaries, no repercussions, only the warmth of his lips, the weight of his form, the way he revived a sense of youth within me, making me feel as if I were 24 once more. Yet, the bell above the door chimed, its sound piercing and abrupt, pulling me back into the present moment. I stepped back, my breath uneven as Mrs. Larson, a familiar face, peeked in, expressing her apologies for leaving her scarf behind. Ethan took a step back, his face a mask of mystery, yet his eyes remained fierce, fixed intently on me. I whispered a few words to Mrs. Larson, my hands shaking as I passed her the scarf, and she departed, unaware of the turmoil she had disrupted. Once we found ourselves alone again, the atmosphere shifted, laden with the weight of our actions. I glanced at Ethan, my voice trembling. "We can't do this," I said, the words echoing emptily, as if I were attempting to persuade my own doubts. It's not right. You're so youthful and I. Incorrect." He interrupted, his tone steady yet gentle. "Diane, you sensed it as well. Don't say you didn't." I couldn't refute it. The reality lingered in the resonance of my body, in the lingering flavor of him on my lips. Yet the burden of it, the difference in our years, the scrutiny we would encounter, the life I had constructed, crushed me, stifling my breath. What if someone were to witness? I murmured, my voice trembling. What if this becomes public? He moved nearer, his hand extending toward mine. Yet I recoiled, my heart pounding. "No one has to know," he murmured, his voice barely above a whisper, tinged with desperation. "This belongs to us, Diane. Only ours." The words lingered in the air. A perilous vow. I yearned to trust him, to surrender myself to this wild, enchanting experience. Yet dread gripped me, fierce and unyielding. What have I done? What was at stake for me? I averted my gaze, preoccupying myself with the chairs, seeking solace in the comfort of the known. "I require some time," I finally stated, my voice trembling slightly. "I require some time to reflect." Ethan held back. He merely nodded, reaching for his camera, yet the expression in his eyes revealed that this was far from finished. As he departed, the bell ringing gently in his wake, I remained solitary in the shop, my thoughts a tempest of remorse and longing. I had ventured into uncharted territory this evening, violating boundaries I never imagined I would breach. As I secured the door, the chill of the sea breeze brushed against my skin. A singular question lingered in my mind. Was this the conclusion or merely the onset of something beyond my grasp? The moments following that kiss in the bookstore seemed to blur into a surreal haze. I found myself gazing at the place where it all unfolded, the recollection of Ethan's lips on mine echoing in my mind like a melody on repeat. My hands would quiver as I placed books on the shelves, my heart pounding at the slightest chime of the bell above the entrance. I convinced myself it was merely a fleeting lapse, an error I could tuck away in the recesses of my thoughts and secure tightly. Yet, the reality was I had no desire to let go of those memories. The guilt lingered, sharp and weighty, yet so did the exhilaration. The way he ignited a sense of aliveness in me that I hadn't experienced in decades. And that filled me with dread. I made an effort to steer clear of Ethan, immersing myself in my tasks, working late at the bookstore, and extending my strolls along the beach. Yet, in this quaint little town, he was an inescapable presence. I would catch glimpses of him jogging along the pier, his shirt hugging his form, or stopping for coffee at the cafe across the street, our eyes meeting through the glass. With every instance my stomach churned, a blend of anxiety and yearning. His restraint was palpable. He refrained from intruding at the shop as he once did, yet his absence only deepened the void. It felt as though he was inviting me to approach him, and I despised the intensity of my desire to do so. One evening, roughly a week later, I was shutting down the bookstore, the sky outside adorned with hues of orange and pink. Exhaustion weighed heavily on me, my thoughts a chaotic mix of conflicting feelings. Guilt for my actions, fear of the implications, and an unyielding, reckless longing that refused to let go. As I secured the door, I caught the faint sound of footsteps trailing behind me, gentle yet undeniable. My heart raced as I turned to see Ethan, his camera casually draped over his shoulder, his face a mystery in the dimming glow of the evening. "Diane," he murmured, his tone soft and tinged with hesitation. May we have a conversation? I ought to have declined. I ought to have simply walked by him and returned to the comfort of my serene, unchanging existence. Yet my feet remained firmly planted on the sidewalk, my breath hitching as our eyes locked. Ethan, I mentioned that I required some time, I said, my voice trembling more than I intended. It's quite complex. He moved in closer, creating a palpable tension in the air, as if a tempest were on the verge of unleashing its fury. I understand it isn't, he replied, his gaze probing into mine. Yet, you occupy my thoughts incessantly. Who we are. I'm certain you sense it as well. His words struck me with a force that unveiled the truths I had been concealing from myself. I felt the urge to refute his claim, to assert that he was mistaken, yet the reality was evident in the way I gravitated toward him, in the way my heartbeat raced at his proximity. I gulped, my throat parched. What is it that you seek from me, Ethan? I inquired, my voice scarcely rising above a murmur. I am 55 years old. At the age of 24. This is going nowhere. He stood resolute, unwavering in his stance. The numbers don't matter to me, he declared, his tone resolute, nearly intense. I have deep feelings for you. Your laughter, the way you discuss literature as if it were a cherished companion, and the way you gaze at the ocean as though it holds the secrets of the universe. I'm not asking for an eternity, Diane. I'm simply inquiring for the moment. The sincerity in his voice, the unfiltered quality of it, unraveled me. The barriers I had constructed began to fall apart, as fear and guilt clashed with the undeniable attraction I felt towards him. He was so near now, near enough that I could discern the golden flecks in his eyes, feel the warmth of his breath. My hands ached to reach for him, to bridge the gap between us, yet I restrained myself, gripping tightly to the final strands of self-control. Then he extended his hand, his fingers gliding over my wrist, a caress so delicate it felt nearly imperceptible, yet it ignited a blaze across my skin. Command me to leave, he urged, his tone hushed and intense. Just say the word and I'll disappear. I parted my lips, the phrase poised, leave, please just leave, but it eluded me. Instead, I remained there, ensnared by his gaze, the world contracting to encompass only the two of us on that serene street. And then, as if a floodgate had opened, I surrendered. I moved closer, my fingers gently tracing his features, and pressed my lips against his. It felt distinct this time, no longer hesitant as it had been previously, but rather fervent, yearning, as if we were striving to compensate for the time we had lost. His arms encircled me, drawing me near, and I surrendered to him, the flavor of him silencing the inner turmoil that insisted this was a mistake. We leaned against the bookstore door, tucked away in the shade of the awning, the cool glass a striking contrast to the warmth that enveloped us. His hand slipped beneath my jacket, following the contour of my waist, and I gasped against his lips, my fingers weaving through his hair. It was audacious, perilous. Anyone could stroll by, notice us, but in that instant I felt indifferent. All I could sense was him, the way he made my blood hum, the way he made me lose sight of who I was meant to be. But then a car horn blared nearby, piercing and disruptive, pulling me back to the present moment. I drew back, breathless, my lips still buzzing from the kiss we shared. Ethan's gaze was intense, his breathing uneven, yet he remained still, making no effort to draw me closer. Diane, he began, his voice gravelly, but I turned away, distancing myself from him. We can't continue down this path, I said, my voice quivering. Someone will notice. Someone is bound to find out. He swept his fingers through his hair, a flash of irritation crossing his features. What's the big deal? Allow them to speak. I'm indifferent to their opinions. But I do, I retorted, the words cutting through the air more harshly than I intended. This is more than a mere game, Ethan. I have a life here, a standing to uphold. If this gets out... I paused, feeling the heavy burden settle over me. The murmurs, the scrutiny, the way the community regarded me, not merely as a woman who had shared a kiss with a younger man, but as something outrageous, something to be ashamed of. He became gentler, his expression transforming into something nearly affectionate. I have no desire to cause you pain, he murmured softly. However, I hold no regrets about this. Nor do I believe you are either. I was at a loss for words. The reality was intricate, a tangled web of longing and apprehension that I couldn't unravel. I averted my gaze, my fingers trembling as I fumbled with the keys to unlock my car. "I must leave," I stated, avoiding his gaze. "I kindly ask for a moment of solitude." He remained silent, yet as I pulled away, I sensed his gaze lingering on me, laden with unvoiced commitments. That night I found myself wide awake, the recollection of his touch igniting a fire within me. I reassured myself that it needed to end, that I couldn't allow this to take over my life. Yet, the anxiety extended beyond merely the possibility of being discovered. The story unfolds. After Ethan's project concluded, marking his departure from town. Could this be the conclusion for him? Is it possible? Or had I already ventured too deep, ensnared in a force that transcended us both? As I gazed at the ceiling, the rhythmic sound of the waves outside my window, one thought kept echoing in my mind. What if this wasn't merely a fleeting moment? What if it were something genuine? And what would I be willing to sacrifice to uncover the truth? The days after that kiss outside the bookstore felt like a precarious balancing act over an abyss. Each moment seemed fragile, as if a single misstep could lead to my world unraveling. At 55, I was Diane, the unassuming bookstore owner who had always kept a low profile in this tranquil coastal town. But now I had transformed into a being of recklessness, one who had savored the allure of the forbidden and found it impossible to resist the longing for more. Ethan's presence was an undeniable force, an attraction that beckoned me closer despite the guilt and fear that gripped my heart. I had expressed my need for distance, yet distance felt like a rare commodity I couldn't afford, especially with him constantly around, his gaze seeking mine in every bustling cafe, in every brief encounter. I attempted to immerse myself in the daily grind, believing that the repetitive nature of organizing books and processing transactions would overshadow the lingering sensation of his caress. Yet it proved futile. The remnants of his touch lingered on my skin, a fiery reminder, while my dreams were shadowed by the haunting melody of his voice as he spoke my name. The most challenging aspect wasn't the longing, it was the trepidation, apprehension of exposure, of the town's murmurs transforming me into a subject of gossip. Worry lingered that Ethan might depart once his project concluded, carrying away this ephemeral, perilous spark. And I dreaded the thought of surrendering, of retreating to my tranquil existence and spending my days pondering the possibilities that might have unfolded. On a Saturday, the bookstore was shut for inventory, leaving me solitary in the back room, encircled by towering stacks of books and the soft murmur of the radio. I had been steering clear of Ethan, evading his messages, and bypassing the cafe where I was certain he would be found. Yet evasion only intensified the strain, akin to a tempest brewing in the distance. As I rummaged through a box of dusty old novels, the sudden jingle of the bell above the door caught me off guard. My heart raced. I had forgotten to unlock the door. I stepped outside, prepared to inform him that the shop was closed, and there he stood. Ethan stood in the dim light, his expression a blend of determination and a gentler emotion that caused my resolve to falter. "Diane," he said, his voice calm and unwavering, "it's time to end this performance." I clutched the edge of the counter, my knuckles turning pale. "What brings you here?" I inquired, my tone more cutting than intended, although I was already aware. He had taken advantage of the spare key I had casually referenced, the one concealed beneath the mat. He remained silent, moving in closer, his gaze fixed intently on me. "You're distancing yourself, yet I can sense that it's not what you truly desire," he remarked. "I perceive it in the gaze you cast upon me, the way you become still when I approach. Prove me wrong." My throat constricted, the truth lodged within like a heavy stone. I felt the urge to deceive, to assure him it was all in his head, yet the words eluded me. Instead, I remained rooted in place, my breath coming in quick, shallow gasps, as the distance between us throbbed with all the unspoken words that lingered in the air. "Ethan, this isn't going to work," I murmured, my voice trembling. "You will be departing shortly. And even if you weren't, I find myself. I'm simply too old for you. This place, these souls, they could never grasp it." He bridged the gap, halting mere inches from me, close enough for me to sense his warmth. "I have no interest in the town," he declared, his tone intense. "Age doesn't matter to me. Your well-being matters to me, Diane. I'm not seeking a strategy or a commitment. His words crashed over me, eroding the remnants of my barriers. Tears threatened to spill from my eyes, not out of sorrow, but from the heaviness of everything. The yearning, the apprehension, the irresistible draw of him. I ought to have urged him to depart, to take his key and his wild heart and be on his way. Yet I extended my hands toward him, trembling as they traced the contours of his face. Kissing him felt like yielding to a powerful tide, allowing it to guide me wherever it desired. His arms encircled me, drawing me near, and the kiss was all-consuming, intense, urgent, a clash of longing and rebellion. We collided with the shelves, books cascading to the ground as his hand slipped beneath my sweater, his touch awakening every nerve in my body. My fingers gripped his shoulders, grounding me as the world whirled around us. It was audacious, perilous. Any passerby could glance in, catch a glimpse of us through the glass, but the danger only heightened the thrill. After a long time, I found myself free from the weight of consequences and rules. I found myself immersed in a sensation of existence, experiencing life in a manner I had long since overlooked. Yet, in that instant, the phone erupted into a piercing ring, demanding attention and breaking the spell. I recoiled breathless, my heart racing as the weight of reality descended upon me. Ethan's gaze was intense, his breathing uneven, yet he remained still, refusing to release his grip. The phone rang incessantly, and I struggled to pick it up, my hands trembling with anxiety. Clara, my coworker, inquired about a shipment, unaware of the tempest she had just disrupted. I uttered a response, scarcely making sense, and ended the call, my legs trembling as I rested against the counter. Ethan observed me, his face a mask of mystery. "Isn't this what you fear the most?" he said softly. "A discovery being made. Someone evaluating you." I nodded, my throat constricted, rendering me speechless. The dread returned, more frigid and piercing than before. What if Clara had entered instead of making a call? What if someone had caught a glimpse of us through the window? The village was quaint, the chatter unyielding. The whispers reached my ears. Diane, the woman from the bookstore, seen with a man much younger than herself. Such a shame. "We can't continue down this path," I murmured, my voice scarcely above a whisper. "It's overwhelming. I can't continue this way," perpetually glancing back. He moved in closer, his hand extending toward mine, yet I recoiled, a firm shake of my head signaling my refusal. "Absolutely not, Ethan. In just a week you will be departing. Let's put an end to this now, before it consumes me." For a brief instant he simply gazed at me, his jaw clenched, his eyes probing into mine. He nodded, slowly and with evident reluctance. "If that's what you want," he said, his voice barely above a whisper, yet it trembled with an undercurrent of emotion that tugged at my heart. He departed in silence, the bell tolling gently in his wake. I found myself amidst a sea of disarrayed books, my body resonating with the lingering sensation of his touch, while my thoughts swirled in a tumult of regret and relief. The following day, I learned he had gathered his things and departed the town at dawn, his work complete, his temporary home vacant. The news struck me with an unexpected intensity, leaving a deep hollow ache within me. Life returned to its familiar cadence, mornings spent among the shelves of the bookstore, afternoons by the ocean's edge and evenings in solitude. Yet it lacked the same essence. I had changed completely. Each moment I walked by the shelves where our lips met, each glance at the ocean shimmering in the sunlight, he was there with me. The secret we shared lingered like a shadow, trailing behind me, murmuring of what I had released. The town remained oblivious, and the murmurs never surfaced, yet the quiet held a punishment of its own. In the quiet of the night, with only the gentle lapping of the waves as my companion, my thoughts would drift to Ethan, wondering about his whereabouts, the company he kept, and whether I ever crossed his mind. I found myself questioning whether I had truly made the right decision, distancing myself from him in an effort to safeguard a life that now seemed more hollow than ever before. In those fleeting instances, I'd sense that spark reignite, that wild, exquisite essence we had begun, smoldering softly within me, a fire that would not extinguish.